Hello, this is Captain Aquarius coming to you again doing business as Dan First on April the 22nd of 2017 from the city of Amiens in northern France, one of the great cathedral cities in this part of the country, as I am making my way now from events that I did in Ireland to events that I will be doing soon in Germany. This is not really a working phase of the tour. It is more a phase of doing really what I have long wanted to do, which is to explore the great cathedrals of northern France. So in recent weeks, I have gone from Paris to Chartres to Mont Saint-Michel, to Rouen, now to Amiens, and tomorrow to Reims, the city in north central France, which, as it turns out, was the place where the French used to do the coronations of their kings. And so that's why the cathedral in this city is especially important. And that's why the chart that you see here for the Black Moon of April the 26th of 2017 is in fact cast for Reims in France, because as it turns out, tomorrow, the day that I will be taking the train from Amiens to Reims, that is, we use trains when it's not possible really to do an entire Aquarian Airlines flight for a longer distance. I will be moving to Reims on the very day that the French are having the first stage of their next presidential election, which, as you may know, usually happens in two stages. In stage one, everybody votes for whoever they want, and then this produces two leading candidates who become the contenders for the runoff in a second election. And this one, of course, is very eagerly and closely watched because naturally people believe that this French election is going to signify something immensely important about the political trend of all of Europe in 2017 and perhaps the years to come. Are the French about to elect Marine Le Pen, that is, the right-wing figure who has been called, in some respects, a kind of French Donald Trump, taking his particular tactic, which is typical for the party that she and her father before her represented, of stirring the passions of the voters by appealing to their hatred of people that they perceive as different from themselves and thereby hostile to themselves. So just as Trump has based his early appeals in his campaign on the hatred that his voters feel for Muslims and for Hispanics and for gays and for whoever else they perceive invariably as different from themselves. The right-wing forces in France and everywhere else have done the same thing. It's a fascinating story. Recently, another figure has emerged, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who is being called a kind of French Bernie Sanders because his appeal is very much the same and the results are very much the same, with great numbers of young people flocking toward him, supporting him, and so this is why he is given a kind of slim chance actually to pull off a slot in the runoff election. Others who are in the running include there's a guy named Macron, Emmanuel Macron, who, as it turns out, is a former investment banker. So who could be a more appropriate choice for representing politics as usual? There's another guy, Francois Fillon, who, as it turned out, was the president of France for 5 years from 2007 to 2012. Not the prime minister. You see, this is a different office, really less responsible, but he is in the race too. And he actually, from some angles and in some lighting, can be said to resemble George Clooney. And it turns out, really, that the field of 12 presidential candidates in this French stage one election can be said to resemble the Republican presidential contenders of 2016, only handsomer. So this process is going to be extremely important, as you know, in giving people one way or another an idea that either the trend toward right wing politics in the United States and Europe is going to continue, or there may be some changing of course here. The entire basic theme is familiar to us by now, and it's the theme that applies, really, as you know, to this moment when we are in transition from the end of the age of Pisces to the beginning of the age of Aquarius. The age of Pisces necessarily, as you know by now, has been largely separative, exclusive, endlessly dualistic in finding ways to separate us from them, black and white, and every other way that we have of drawing distinctions between ourselves and other people whom we see as different from ourselves, with the result, inevitably, that when human beings are thinking in this way, there is a very small slip of the lip that goes from thinking a person is different to thinking he is an enemy, or he is inferior, or he is a threat, and so on. And so the other point of view, naturally, the Aquarian point of view, is inclusive. It sees all human beings as basically the same and wishes to evolve beyond these misunderstandings, these prejudices, these blindnesses, these misconceptions, to the effect that simply because we have different skins, we are somehow different people. The fact is, on the inside, we are all the same color, which is neutral. And this may apply also to all other apparent distinctions, which matter little to those who are living in love and in inclusiveness, but which matter a great deal to those who are living in fear and exclusiveness. So we take a look at the chart and we see then the way in which this chart reflects this fundamental situation, not only at the moment of this very important French election, but also at the time when we are going to find ourselves increasingly faced with the question of whether we are going to keep doing things as we have always been doing them before, or whether we are going to start doing things differently, with the understanding that if we keep doing things the way we've done before, we're going to get the same results we have gotten before. One does not have to be Lewis Black to see this, or to begin yelling in a somewhat louder tone of voice about it. We can keep doing the same things, getting the same results. We can consider doing different things and perhaps, oh my, getting different results. How does the chart reflect this? Well, look up at the top and you see that the ninth house, which is the house of government, of institutional power, of authority, such as governments, courts of law, banks, hospitals, universities, other institutions that are grounded in established wealth and power, has, as you can see, the conjunct moon and sun, which are always in this position at the black moon, which is the moment in the cycle 2 days before the first thin crescent of the new moon appears, when moon and sun are in exact alignment. And that is why this is always considered the moment of emergence, the moment of birth, the beginning of a new cycle. To the right of this is another important conjunction that we see here between Mercury, who looks rather like Venus. You see Venus there in the eighth house, except Mercury has these two little things at the top of his symbol that remind me of the wings on Mercury's helmet. Mercury is the messenger, the communicator, the force of thought and of speech. And he is next to the figure who looks like the letter H. This is the planet Uranus, the revolutionary. the bringer of change, the innovator, when these two are in conjunction like this, it means an abundant, really fervent electrical flow of thought and inspiration. It means that a number of people in the area of public administration, authority, and power are going to be handling an enormous flow of new ideas. Doesn't mean necessarily that they're good ideas or that they mean you any goodness at all. The people who mean to hurt and undermine others can be as inspired and hardworking as those who mean to help and heal us. But there is feverish mental activity going on here, and there is a great deal of effort being devoted to it, because you can see that this conjunction of Mercury and Uranus in the ninth house is in a 120-degree angle called a trine with Saturn, who is down there in the fifth house of the chart at 27 degrees of Sagittarius. Another fiery leadership sign in the house of creativity, at least where this chart is concerned. As you know, if the chart is cast for other regions of the earth, then the house positions are naturally going to change. But this is the one that is in effect for all of Central European summertime, which is now in effect, and therefore it embraces all of Western and Central Europe except for England and Portugal. And therefore, as this entire continent is affected by the events that are transpiring this week, it is appropriate, therefore, to look at this chart in these terms. We notice also, and we will talk about this a little bit more later, that this tremendously advantageous 120-degree trine between Mercury, Uranus in the ninth house and Saturn in the fifth house has excuse me, a third point to the triangle. It's over on the left, where you see between the 12th and the first houses the line that marks the eastern horizon point in the chart. That's why this is called the rising point in the rising sign. The point of 25 degrees of Leo, who is in, therefore, the perfect equilateral triangle of a grand trine with these other 2 points. Now, this ascendant point is less consequential because it's so relative. As you know, charts being cast for other parts of the world on this day and time are going to have different house cusps, different ascendants. But what is significant here, and what really marks the opportunities we should be well aware of in the months to come, is the position of the North Moon's node. You see the node there, as you notice, at 1 degree of Virgo in the first house. Unlike the planets, which within this design move counterclockwise to the left within the wheel, the nodes move to the right, which means that in the months ahead, the north node, the right side up horseshoe, will be moving closer and closer to the late degrees of the sign of Leo, which will bring him into the perfect grand trine with these other 3 points, as well, not really with Mercury, because Mercury is so fast moving. But Mercury leaves the alignment, but Uranus and Saturn and the North Moon's node will be in this grand trine with each other for much of the summer. And so this is a hugely important thing, because it means that we have the ability to work hard in Saturnian terms, to use innovative methods of revolutionary change in Uranian terms, to transform our relationships, which are the purview of the moon's nodes. And so we have some weirdness and misunderstanding, loud rhetoric, stupidity, and difficulty to contend with in the month or 2 immediately ahead. But once we get to June, the possibilities open up. Let us be ready.